And in a way, it's a combination of both of those men, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson, that prompts the question. Boris Johnson's legion misconduct and Jacob Rees-Mogg's crashing arrogance and ignorance combine to create this morning's question. What's the worst thing he's done? What is the worst thing Boris Johnson has done for you? Going back over, should we start with since he became Prime Minister? Or do you want to go back to when he was born? I don't think that would be reasonable. But we could certainly go back to when he came into the public eye, when you first knew about him. Let's leave the school report out of it. Let's concentrate on what's the worst thing he's done. Because there's that amazing tale, isn't there, about how Al Capone presided over one of the most bloody crime families in the history of, the world, I suppose. And yet, finally, when they got him, it was for tax offences. It was for tax evasion. A clever investigation to look at every aspect of his organisation and find something, because they were never going to be able to pin a murder on him. They were never going to be able to break the mafia code. But, of course, with forensic accountants, as we would call them these days, they were able to establish fiscal misconduct. So a man reportedly responsible for hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths and sundry other serious crimes and misdemeanours was actually caught in the end by accountants. He was caught by his tax affairs. If Boris Johnson goes for having a party during lockdown, or having several parties during lockdown, and or lying about them, it would be in many ways remarkable. And although it's a slightly lazy leap, and Richard points out that Thatcher was replaced by John Major in the build-up to the First Gulf War, so Jacob Rees-Mogg's ignorance extends even to living memory, never mind the era that he sometimes pretends to live in. And the question of what Boris Johnson would need to do to get handed his sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap is one that we've often asked on this programme. And in fact, not long ago, we stopped asking it. It had become clear that he was the sort of politician possessed of the requisite materials to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, as Donald Trump famously explained, and not lose a single vote. You can see it a little bit now, although, frankly, I've got to tell you, it's crumbling. Only the Mail, the Dean Dorries, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Conor Burns remain. The Mail, I mean, considering how many years the Mail had its finger on the pulse of Middle England, or at least on the bile duct, had its finger on the bile ducts of Middle England, to be getting this so catastrophically wrong is, for students of newspaper editors or editorships, it is absolutely incredible. Johnson faces police interview over parties is the front page of Rupert Murdoch's Times. Hello, 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 Bojo is the front page of Rupert Murdoch's Sun. But Lord Rothermere's Daily Mail goes with a nation that's lost all sense of proportion, mounting an attack there on the rule of law and suggesting that the people who wrote the rules that prevented you from attending funerals, celebrating birthdays, saying goodbye to loved ones, the people who wrote those rules, riding roughshod over them on an almost daily basis, is not something you should be getting your little head in a bother about. You shouldn't be getting your little knickers in a twist about that, you plebs. It's Boris Johnson. He can jolly well do what he wants. Now get a proper sense of proportion, please. Doff cap, tug forelock, and look the other way. So the question that I have decided to ask you is one to which I genuinely don't know the answer, because I think, sincerely, that we could fill an hour, and probably more, with utterly plausible responses, with answers that are both personal and political. There will be reasons why you have been particularly bothered by an event from his past. There'll be reasons why something he has done in the past upsets you more than it upsets other people. It may be something to do with his moral code as opposed to his professional performance. It may be linked to Brexit. It may be linked to Darius Guppy. It may be linked to the myriad failures over which he's presided in the context of the coronavirus. That the worst thing that Boris Johnson has ever done, go back to being London mayor, possibly even pulling up on some of his journalism, the Islamophobia that he was sharing in The Spectator not that long ago, Andrew Neil's Spectator. I genuinely want to know. So take a moment. I'm not going to take any calls until after the 10:15 pause. Or inhalation, we should call it. Keith says I shouldn't call it a break. So I'm going to call it an inhalation. The 10:15 inhalation, can we call it an inhalation? Or cake time at 10:15. We'll have some cake at 10:15, shall we? The point being that I want to know why that would be what you would choose. I am still pretty big on the unlawful prorogation of Parliament. I don't know why I'm so hung up on that. I think it's because I spent so long desperately trying to give a break to people who voted for Brexit and claimed it had nothing to do with xenophobia and that they knew what they were doing and their eyes were wide open. And eventually, after the fishing had gone and the farming had gone, eventually all they were left with, and I say this with still a modicum of affection and warmth, all you were left with was this slightly desperate sigh of sovereignty. So I thought, okay, well, they obviously take these institutions very seriously, or not obviously. They are claiming that sovereignty is very important to them, that they have a sort of emotional relationship with our parliament and with our unwritten constitution. These are people who do feel reverence towards Her Majesty the Queen. These are people who, because I didn't want to believe that everybody was either thick or racist or both, that voted for that referendum back in 2016. I don't believe that. I think appallingly misinformed, misled, misdirected is a huge part of the problem. But the ones who were still shouting about it, the ones who weren't prepared to at least sort of sit down and be quiet for a while, ended up claiming it was all about sovereignty. And I wanted to give them a break. I really wanted to believe that there was some sort of, I didn't feel it myself necessarily, but I wanted to respect the sincerity of people who claimed that they really cared about that kind of thing. So when he sent Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is in a way the poster boy for the kind of bogus patriotism that I'm describing, when he sent Jacob Rees-Mogg to give the Queen unlawful advice about the prorogation of Parliament, that for me was huge. Didn't land with a lot of people in the way that it should have done, because the claim was made, oh no, we have to do this to, quotes, get Brexit done. But it blew away for me the last vestige of hope that there was some honesty involved in that whole project. It blew away for me the last scintilla of possibility that there was some sincerity involved in the idea that you knew what you were voting for. Because if you voted for the primacy of our Parliament, the idea that it could be unlawfully prorogued after sending Jacob Rees-Mogg to mislead the Queen, to me was huge. But I'm a bit weird. And obviously, like everyone else in this country, my brain had been a little bit boiled by the whole Brexit debate. I still think that was massive. I think it was historical in its awfulness. Historic and historical, actually. It is something that in the annals of our island's history will assume a very special place. Was he Leader of the House of Commons at the time? I think he probably was. Sending Jacob Rees-Mogg to mislead the Queen about the unlawful prorogation of our Parliament. Didn't touch the sides of the rest of the country. It was a very lonely furrow to plough. But I mention it here to show you how wide open the parameters are for your contribution to this programme, for your answer to this question. What, for you, is the worst thing that Boris Johnson has ever done?